want to kind of make sure that takes place. Go back here.
Oh,
What can you do?
I was just going to say, at the same time we were running that project in Northern Canada, we were also running one in Colombia, South America, and that was about 10 times more difficult. So, as much as, I highlighted some difficulties, smaller comparatively to other international spaces.
Yeah, and I can elaborate as well. Our product is kind of has its own difficulties no matter where we're talking about going, because it's a biology, it's a living thing with microorganisms and things like that, which is always going to make things difficult. And it's complicated by the fact that we get our inbound material from so many different sources. So, there are means of moving sort of fertilizers and things like that back and forth across the border, and the criteria is spelled out pretty succinctly. So it's just that we have some complicating factors. And then, I will say I move across the border every week, and my work entry visa is under NAFTA, and it was actually a pretty painless process. So, it benefited me anyway in terms of my job. So,
Great question.
Yeah, I had a question for Greg about the research park. What is the relationship between the University of Alberta and is the $500 million in sponsored research have any correlation with that?
Between the research park, there isn't a formal relationship at all. The other organization that I actually left off my slide is a group called Tech Edmonton. They are almost like a mini research park downtown. They're advisors that help the technologies coming out of the university commercialize. So you can get executives in residence. So they'll be your CEO for 9 months, help you get off the ground, commercialize your technology, get you running out the door. So that's a formal relationship with the University of Alberta.
As the ice cap recedes, the Arctic is becoming a very controversial topic. I was curious about whether the U.S. and Canada are in alignment on policy there, or are we in conflict?
Yeah, that's, I think a lot of people are kind of drawing the line in the sand right now, and the problems with maritime jurisdiction law is when you get that ice cap flow dynamic going on, no one's too sure what that 200-mile corridor means anymore. So, yeah, that's something that the international maritime law experts are going to field day with over the next few years, how they sort of revisit this. And the Danes got a big say in this, and a few other countries as well, the Russians certainly. So that is a file that is sort of, is waiting to be dealt with correctly. And in terms of how the U.S. and Canada approach it, certainly Canada sees that as kind of sovereign territory, and they want to make a big stand of putting research stations in there. The government that we have currently, under Stephen Harper, is committed to building the commercial potential of the North. So I think you're going to see a pretty aggressive move there for Canada over the next 10 years. And of course, Alaska being where it is, that opens up a whole new set of opportunities for the U.S. as well. So hopefully it'll be more along the collaborative front rather than the confrontation front. And I think that's where it is going to go. But like any negotiation, you get a lot of hard lines drawn at first, and then people come forth.
Just quickly on the Arctic side, the Arctic Council, which is an intergovernmental organization, the next president is for 2 years is Canada, the following 2 years is the U.S. And right now, the policy leaders in both of the foreign ministries, the U.S. State Department, are working very closely together to develop an aligned strategy for those 4 years. So there's a few small jurisdictional disputes, but they've kind of agreed to disagree on those. But there seems to be, so far, the U.S. kind of seems to want to take a second position on the Arctic. They don't want to engage as much on Alaska. It's much more important to Canada, but there seems to be a strong indication that there will be a lot of cooperative work going together.
Yeah, I'm sure if you look at the current administration, their list of priorities, the Arctic would not fall on anyone's short list. But in Canada, it's top of mind. You hear about it a lot in Canada.
Yeah, well, I've been to Anchorage a lot, and you're hearing about it in Anchorage a lot, so it's pretty important to Alaska.
Yeah, well, it would be up there, but certainly from a fishing point of view and an energy point of view, yeah.
Richard, along that same line, in terms of things that are of a real priority in Canada, relate back to this Beyond the Border initiative and the Regulatory Cooperation Council. which we don't hear much about here in Washington, but I think there's an opportunity for businesses and industry associations to be more involved with that. And they are trying to, they, being all of our policy people, to come together to make a more efficient border crossing. And they're looking to hear from industry as to what the issues are and where things can be more aligned. There never will be a total assimilation of policies, whether it's from Environment Canada, EPA, and FDA, and CFIA, and that sort of thing. But to have those policies aligned so that people and product can cross the border more efficiently, and there is opportunity for private sector input into that process right now. So, you know, if you're not a policy wonk, you're probably not even aware of that discussion, but it's out there.
Well, just following on that, in terms of TJ and Elizabeth, you both talked about the permitting process, cost of business, you know, it's not just closing a contract, it's getting the stuff up there. What are the real times that it's taken you? Both talked about it getting easier as you've gone along. Again, follows on James' issue there. How much quicker? And again, in terms of getting permitting done in other US states, what's the time difference, excluding Colombia? What's the real time in terms of from where to go, in terms of actually getting everything in line, and how much easier it has it gotten for you guys as you've done more and more business in Canada?
Well, so, you know, we haven't done much in terms of getting things across the border from the US into Canada, like our proprietary technology or anything like that. All of our permitting woes have been just in the province of BC and dealing with that. And I think, has it gotten easier and how long has it taken? Well, I think this is the only one that we have built so far, and so whether or not it's gotten easier, I really can't say. I think the next one that we do, especially in the province of BC, will be easier because there are a lot of lessons learned, and we'll have good data to look at from the facility that we'll begin operating now to provide to the permitting agencies and things like that. Compared to the U.S. in permitting timeline, you know, the U.S. is state-by-state regulations, so Washington's organic waste permitting process is pretty archaic as opposed to Oregon. So, you know, it's hard to say if it's faster in BC versus Washington versus Oregon or whatever. I think time will tell for us.
I mean, yeah, the projects are also different. That it is hard to compare. I think the first 2 or 3 or 4 take forever, and then after that, they all just reference back to each other, right? I mean, in some ways, Canada is just kind of like another state in my mind for us. It's, I mean, that's offensive. Okay, I didn't realize that. I meant it as a compliment. But you know, for example, we went through a technology verification program in Washington State, where our company had been for 6 years, and it still took us 6 years to go through that program in Washington State. Now there were some funding issues, but still it was a long process. But now once we had those first 3, they just kind of all reference back. You know, New York, California, Oregon, Texas, all of those states have referenced what we've done in both Ontario and Washington and Oregon. You know, in the last 2 to 3 years here, and all of them have saying like, that's good enough for us, sounds great, and move forward. So.
I'm just cutting the time here. It's just before 9. I think we're going to close it off right now. I just want to say thanks very much to the Clean Tech Alliance and Tom and your group for having us here and having a chance to get the speakers together. I very much enjoyed it. Maybe just a quick round of applause for our speakers here. The floor for a few final words.
Thank you. So this is Patrick Drum. He's going to say a word or two. He's our host of UBS Arbor Group. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank, I hope no war occurs as a result of TJ's comment. One question for you, Greg. If a waitress can make $100,000, how much does a novice American waiter make? No answer.
Tom has been sourcing that question. Again, thank you. It's a pleasure to host and partner with the great folks at WCTA. Got an active agenda coming up. Fall, winter, we're having some real talented speakers and engagements, so this is our first launch. It's a great way to do it.